Chapter 14. Aadhira folded her saris silently, each delicate fabric holding memories she desperately wished to forget. The empty suitcase in front of her felt both like a betrayal and a chance at freedom, a painful symbol of the life she'd tried to build, now shattered beyond repair. 1 year. 1 year of forced smiles, cold silences, fiery clashes, and buried emotions. Now at last their contract was done, and she was finally leaving. Her heart clenched at the thought of walking away, yet staying felt even more impossible. Rudra's words from the night before haunted her, each syllable etched deeply into her soul. Aadhira is nothing but a strategic asset. It had cut deeper than any insult or injury she had faced before, robbing her of any illusion that he might care, even a little. Just as she placed the last sari in her suitcase, the heavy sound of footsteps echoed outside the room, approaching fast and unsteady. Before she could turn around, the door flew open violently, slamming into the wall behind it. Rudra stood there, his usually pristine appearance disheveled, eyes dark with a mixture of drunkenness and desperation. His gaze landed immediately on the suitcase, his expression twisting with raw fury. "You're leaving?" His voice was rough, unsteady, but carried the dangerous edge that she knew so well. Aadhira straightened her spine, forcing herself to remain calm despite the panic surging through her. "Our contract is over, Rudra," she said softly, her voice firm despite the tremor beneath. "There's nothing left for me here." Without warning, Rudra crossed the room in 2 swift strides, roughly shoving the suitcase aside. Its contents spilled onto the floor in a silken cascade of colors. Before Aadhira could protest, his strong hands grasped her waist, pulling her body flush against his. "You're not leaving," he growled, the alcohol on his breath mingling with the dark intensity in his eyes. His grip was tight, possessive, desperate. Her heart pounded furiously, torn between anger and longing, her breath quickening at his nearness. "Why?" she whispered, her voice trembling as her eyes searched his face desperately, hoping against hope for a truth she needed to hear. For a heartbeat, Rudra didn't speak, the air between them thickening with emotion. His eyes softened just slightly, revealing the barest hint of vulnerability beneath the layers of anger and pain. Slowly, his hand lifted, cupping her face gently but possessively, his thumb brushing over her cheek with a tenderness that startled her. "Because you're mine," he breathed, his voice low and desperate, his lips dangerously close to hers. The words, raw and possessive, hung in the air, filled with both promise and threat. Her breath hitched, heart aching fiercely with the unfairness of it all. She had waited months, long, torturous months, for him to say something, anything, to show her that she mattered beyond his possessive hold. But now it felt too late. She shook her head, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I'm not yours, Rudra. You never wanted me. You only wanted control." He pressed his forehead to hers, closing his eyes tightly, as though her words physically pained him. His voice softened, raw emotion seeping into his next words. "That was before," he murmured roughly, his breath hot against her skin. "Before I knew what losing you would feel like." Aadhira's chest tightened painfully, every nerve in her body aware of how dangerously close she was to giving in. She wanted so desperately to believe him, to believe that beneath the cold exterior lay a man capable of love, not just control. "You don't love me, Rudra," she whispered brokenly. "You love having power over me." His eyes flashed open, raw anguish glittering dangerously in their depths. "Then teach me," he demanded fiercely, voice breaking with desperation. "Teach me how to love you, because I don't know how to let you go." Aadhira swallowed hard, a single tear slipping down her cheek. His thumb brushed it away instantly, his touch gentle, almost reverent, despite the strength in his grip. "Please," he whispered, voice trembling, vulnerable for the first time. "Stay. Just stay." The vulnerability in his eyes tore at her heart, shattering the final defenses she'd carefully built around herself. But even as the tenderness softened her resolve, she couldn't shake the lingering fear. Fear that she would always be second to his pride, to his obsession with power. She reached up, gently placing her hand over his, feeling his pulse quicken beneath her fingertips. "I can't stay just to be another possession, Rudra. If you want me here, you need to want me, not just because I'm yours, but because you truly love me." He closed his eyes again, jaw tight, his shoulders trembling slightly beneath the weight of her words. Slowly, reluctantly, his grip on her loosened. Her heart broke a little more at the loss of his touch, but she knew it was necessary. As Rudra stepped back, his expression turned painfully unreadable, masking the vulnerability she'd glimpsed moments before. The silence stretched heavy and suffocating. "I need time," he finally admitted, voice low, raw honesty spilling through every syllable. "Time to learn what love really means, because if I lose you, I'll lose everything." Aadhira studied his face, seeing sincerity beneath the layers of his carefully constructed facade. The room felt painfully empty, the spilled saris at their feet a stark reminder of the choice before her. She bent down slowly, gathering the saris from the floor, placing them back into the suitcase with shaking hands. Rudra's jaw clenched, eyes darkening with fear and confusion, assuming she'd made her choice. But when she straightened, she didn't close the suitcase. Instead, she turned to him, holding his gaze steadily. "One chance, Rudra," she whispered firmly, hope and vulnerability mixing in her eyes. "I'm giving you one last chance." Relief flooded his expression, mingling with quiet determination. He stepped forward, hesitating just briefly before lifting his hand to her cheek once again, the touch soft, filled with unspoken promise. "One chance is all I need," he whispered fiercely, his voice a vow. "I won't lose you again." As they stood together, facing each other amidst the scattered remnants of their past, they both knew the journey ahead would be difficult, painful even. But for the first time, Rudra had surrendered his power, willingly placing his heart into her hands. It was fragile, dangerous, and achingly uncertain, but it was real, and for now it was enough.